What's going on, guys? And welcome to man, I can't even remember what number this is now. Anyways, welcome to the Warcry Podcast. I'm your host, Yehoah Tiger. Um, Football is upon us. Saturdays are null and void because of the Sooners and the Cowboys. But I'm very lucky. This is Sunday. I'm recording this on Sunday. I'm very lucky to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend. He's been around the Bigfoot community for a lot of years. Um, my experience with him was back in the old days, and we'll get to that. But joining me is Matt Knapp from Bigfoot Crossroads. Man, I appreciate you joining me. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
man. I appreciate you having me. Paybacks, man. you know, I enjoyed our conversation on my end, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining me, man. I haven't really done a lot of interviews, but I'm being very selective in who I bring on the podcast to do interviews with because I think sometimes you just I see so many different podcasts nowadays. They just bring somebody on just to bring them on, and oh they had a interesting story, and I want to talk to people who know things, but also too they have different stories to tell, and you're definitely one guy that's on my list, man. I appreciate you having me on your show, but for people that don't know or that haven't listened to Bigfoot Crossroads, how did you start in this thing, man? How did you get going on this path?
Yeah, man. It's pretty crazy, to be perfectly honest. Um, I'll go ahead and give you the full story. I usually give kind of an abridged version, but I, I've always been interested in like the paranormal and stuff because I grew up in a house that had some haunting activity. Like before I was ever born, people were experiencing things in this house. And I'm of a certain age now where like I grew up in a time before the internet and everything. So my only access to information was like TV documentaries, going
Mm.
to the library, the occasional library at the school would have something, bookstores, any chance I got. But back then, if it was a weird subject like UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, whatever, it all kind of got lumped together in the same section. And a
Mm.
lot of times those subjects would get lumped together in the same books. So trying to learn as much as I could about ghosts and trying to figure out, what was going on in my own house. I wanted to be a young Ghostbuster. uh, I just ended up running across things about Bigfoot too, and it just really piqued my interest. I was really into like nature and animals and the outdoors and everything, and this was something that kind of encompassed all those subjects as well as my interest in the unknown, and it just stuck with me. But really, it didn't ever come to the forefront. I was really kind of a paranormal person, but then later on in life, internet comes around. I'm actually at a buddy's house staying the night, and I'm on his computer, and I just do an internet search for Bigfoot.
Mm.
And there was at that time there was probably, man, maybe 4 or 5 websites about the subject, and it was all just group based. And but it kind of blew my mind that people were like actively going out and looking for this thing.
Mm.
So I ended up going on the biggest website at the time, which it probably still is, the BFRO.
Mm.
And they had this, just back in those days, there was just like a thing you could click and apply to become a member of the BFRO. So I did it.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. And
It's like that simple. It's just like you
that
just
simple, man. I'm just like, oh, all right. You know, uh, so I get home and there's a message on my answering machine. How does that sound? And it's from a guy named Matt Moneymaker.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, we got your application, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like listening to it. And like, keep in mind, I'm completely new to the subject, other than like stuff I've read in books. I've never heard of the BFRO before. This was the first night that I've ever even like looked at the Bigfoot stuff on the internet. And honestly, I heard the name Matt Moneymaker and I'm like, wait, my name's Matt. what are the odds that his name is Matt too and his last name's this is some kind of scam. They're just trying
Man.
to get like some money or something. So I ignored the message. And that was that. And then like a little while after that, you know, probably like a couple weeks, I realized that like, oh wait, no, that's really his name. This isn't a scam. This is an actual group. They really do this. So I emailed him and I was like, hey, I got your phone message and everything. And I was a member of the BFRO. Uh, never went on any outings, never had access to like the secret message forum, you know, that they discussed things and the inner workings or anything like. I was just a member. I don't know what that really meant. I never talked to anyone or anything. So I kind of started looking for other groups and found a group based out of Oklahoma where I live. And I was like, oh, this is cool. These people are here, you know, but that's also kind of crazy to me because I had never heard of Bigfoot in Oklahoma, you know? So,
And what? How old were you when you did
dude,
that?
this was probably like, man, I was probably 21, 22 at the time.
I was thinking you were like 15.
Oh, geez, no.
I was like, dang. It's like, man, Matt Moneymaker.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, we gotta train these kids young.
Yeah. But this group, it was really mostly comprised of people that had been in a different group and got kicked out.
Oh my gosh.
You know, so the whole group politics thing came into play at a very early time for me. But yeah, they had like a chat room where they'd go and do like voice chat meetups every night pretty much. And I go on there and I got to know the people. And for a long time though, man, I didn't say anything. You know, I would go to like the message boards and stuff because that's how Bigfoot worked back in the day, was everybody was posting on message boards. And I would read stuff, but I wouldn't comment or anything. And eventually I built up the courage to like start commenting, but I didn't want people coming after me because, like, you know, they'd be like, who are you? What have you done? Well, nothing.
Yeah.
But I caught the attention of a guy named Bear. And Bear was part of that group that I was talking to, and he emailed me and he was like, man, I've read some of your posts. I think you should post more. You know, you should talk more. You should respond. You're a smart guy. And I just kind of struck up a Bigfoot friendship with him, got to know the other people, and finally just, I believe it was one day in November, I decided to take the plunge and meet up with a bunch of strangers and go out in the woods and look for Bigfoot.
Man, that's kind of crazy, like how, you know, the internet and how that, you know, it originally first kind of started was just like basically you guys ended up on chat, like basically chat rooms. That's just wild to me.
Yeah. The whole atmosphere and universe of the online Bigfoot community has completely changed from what it was whenever I got involved. At least 2 or 3 different times. I mean, it's gone through several different, you know, versions. You know, there was like the original version that I would call voice chat, and that kind of morphed into the message board thing. And then there was MySpace for a time was the thing.
I think I might have been like middle school.
yeah, man. And then, you know, now it's just pretty much a Facebook game.
Yeah, and that's one thing that, you know, I kind of I try to stay off and try to not say much on those groups because, like, it's come to a point now where just about anybody and their mama can just jump on there and say all types of crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, it's horrible for sure.
And so that kind of took you to what I found out, like what I think I might have been. I was a young guy. I might have been just in high school, and I was searching on YouTube because I was trying to find, because I had experiences with things my entire life, and you know, I just was like, well, let's see if there's anybody, you know, here in this area, maybe Texas, and you know, I don't know if you heard of a guy named Bob Garrett, but I know I had found him. But then also I found the Bigfoot Outlaws, and you guys are, to me, the precipice of like what it was, as like as telling stories, getting information out there, and a lot of the stuff that you guys, in my opinion, came up with, or not really came up with, but found and researched, and took eyewitness accounts and things like that. It kind of morphed the Bigfoot community into more of like an information type, gathering for people like me who I ain't going out there, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm sticking. I'll hear people's stories, and I'll let people, if they want to do those things, they do them. But let me know. I kind of want to know, how was it, being in that group, and I guess you can hit the high points. You don't have to get into the nitty gritty, but I'm just kind of curious on how that how long that went for, and how it shook out.
Man, all right. So that original group that I joined with, that was based out of Oklahoma, was founded by a guy named Robert and his best friend, and they just jokingly called the group the Monkey Chasers. And then yeah, and then like the majority of the group was made up of people that had been members of the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Researchers Organization, or the GCBRO, or as we called it, the Bro. And there was kind of a falling out, between individuals, and some people left, some people got kicked out, but there was just a huge exodus, basically, of the vast majority of the members that all left. And Robert was like, hey, you guys can join my group. So they all joined his group. And that was happening right as I joined, right as I got involved. And I didn't really know about all that until later. So it was kind of a weird time. But I was also, like I said, early 20s, but I was by far the youngest person in that group. But I had been raised by my actual great grandparents, and I was an only kid. So I was raised by older people, and I was around older people all the time. So I was very comfortable around them, even though they were way older than me. I knew how to talk to them. I knew how to be respectful and keep my mouth shut, and, it's weird to talk about it because you hear about a Bigfoot group, and I think this might have had something to do with why we had what I would consider the success that we had. We were more like a family, man. We weren't even like a group. We were a group of like friends. And yeah, I just grew to like really know them, and they grew to really know me. So we had that trust factor going on, and we just loved each other's company. So we were going out all the time. We were talking all the time. There weren't any real problems or, politics going on within the group or anything like that back in the early days, because, we were just a big, happy family, basically. And through those people, they all knew other people and everything. So there was like different extensions. So we would like know people down in Texas, and we'd have a big outing in Texas one month, and the next month it would be up in Oklahoma. And there's just really all over kind of like the southern United States. People of in the group like would live in different states. They would know people, and most of the group, the core members of the group, this wasn't new to them, man. They had been like, I mean, you're talking about like, just to name drop some names, Bear and Kumbo, the two main people that you think of whenever you hear Bigfoot Outlaws, if you know anything about the Bigfoot Outlaws. Those guys like grew up with these things on like the property where their families lived. That's how they knew about them. Dan Rickey, he had been investigating Bigfoot, like actually going out and looking for this thing since like the 1970s.
Man.
So you're talking decades of experience before I even meet the people. So they're just like giving me this wealth of information all the time, just all this information, teaching me things. But it wasn't just some old rednecks telling me stuff. I was able to go out into the field and like apply the stuff that they would teach me and see if it worked without them there, just on my own. And it did. And then I was able to tell other people about it and see other people get the same results going out on their own. So these guys, you know, once that started taking place, I was like, man, this is crazy. These guys know what they're talking about, and these things are everywhere. And if you know what to look for and what to do, like, you can have an encounter. And that's exactly what happened. Just trusting them, uh, listening to what they were saying, and like all of it made sense. Coming from a background of, you know, growing up around outdoorsmen, you know, hunting and fishing, like everything they said just made sense. It was, you know, common sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, man, it led to a couple sightings, a whole bunch of what I think were definite encounters. And that went on, that that boat ride lasted for, geez, close to 20 years.
Yeah, I was like, like I said, I remember you guys back. I was a young guy, man, when YouTube was first starting to kind of, catch a little, little steam. I was like, I found you guys, but could you name some of those things that you would do out in the field when those guys would teach you these things? What are some things that I guess if you wanted, if you can give me a few of the kind of the nondescript stuff, but I'm kind of curious on what you used out there to kind of get them going. I guess those Bigfoot.
Man, so first and foremost, these guys would do calls. Now, back in the day, you know, if you've watched Finding Bigfoot, you're familiar with calls. You've heard Bobo do calls. These guys were the first to do calls. Nobody was doing calls. In fact, most of the Bigfoot world would make fun of them and be like, oh man, they're full of it. They can't, how do they call, they can't call these things in. That's ridiculous. How would they even know? Well, go out to the woods with them and find out. That was the thing. They would straight up tell you. There were, because, whenever it comes to Bigfoot, especially online, there's a lot of trash talkers, man. There's a lot of skeptics. And Baron Kumbo would be like, hey, put your money where your mouth is, fly here. I'll take you out to the woods and show you. Like, there won't be any argument about it. Come to me. I'll take you out and prove it to you. And nobody would do that. But the people that did do that found out, like, oh man, these guys are telling the truth. And again, it was a situation where they had grown up with these things. They had heard these things making calls on their property, and they would just learn how to mimic those calls back to them. So you had that aspect of it. And just as a little side note, I've never met the dude personally, but friends of mine knew a Native American guy here in Oklahoma that went by the name of Tracer. And Tracer could do those same calls and had never met Baron Kumbo.
Oh, wow.
He learned the calls on his own growing up here. And I've met a few other people over the years that can also do calls that learn them wherever they're from, that didn't learn them from Baron Kumbo or anything. At one point in time, going back to the BFRO, now this is pre-Finding Bigfoot days, they offered to buy the calls. They wanted Baron Kumbo to record the calls so they could put it on CD and call blast them.
Wow.
And Baron Kumbo wouldn't do it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was probably the big one. The other thing was using topo maps, maps that show the topography, the terrain of an area and everything, and knowing different features of the land to look for and everything, being able to kind of find out about sightings, talk to some locals and everything, and you get a general idea of an area, and then you look for certain physical characteristics of the area, and that's basically how we would find a location to go to. And then being patient, that's another one that people often overlook. You can't just go to an area and expect something to happen. It usually takes about 3 days before they start coming around and checking you out and everything, which is another big one. We didn't go, all the time. There were times that we went off hiking into the wilderness, but usually we would go to an area like a campground. We would meet up and have, the campsite area, but then we'd have locations around there within driving distance, an hour or so. And a lot of times it was just, old backcountry roads and things like that. And we would go out there, do the calls, and just wait, see if we got a response. It was oftentimes hit or miss, but I would say our success rate was 60 to 65%, which
that's pretty high.
I would say that's damn good for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And like I said, it put me in position to see them, so I can't really knock it.
And let me ask you this: is there any of these places here in Oklahoma? Could you give, maybe you don't have to say the name of the of the town or where they're at, or just kind of for the people listening. What is some areas in Oklahoma that you're like, hey, that place, no doubt in my mind, and maybe a place that's kind of unexpected that people don't really think that would be a place where they'd be at?
Sand Springs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Sand Springs.
That's a Tulsa Metro right there for you people that don't know.
Yeah. That one's crazy, but I've heard over the years probably 4 or 5 different stories from different people that aren't connected in any way that had encounters in the Sand Springs area. There's same for, I'll say, kind of east of Tulsa. If you follow the Arkansas River southeast and get out, on the outskirts of like Broken Arrow and out there, I've heard some things from out there, which I think anytime it's around Tulsa, it sounds pretty crazy to me,
Yeah, that does. I mean, especially with the, as many, I mean, there's like with Broken Arrow and even in Coweta area, it's growing. Like there's so many people that are moving to that area.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me that people are, seeing that thing out, especially in Broken Arrow. That's kind of crazy.
I just talked to someone pretty recent within the past couple of weeks who's they've got some relatives that own some property out there, and it's a big chunk of land. Because whenever they told me what happened, they actually commented on a YouTube upload that I did. I was like, hey, can you email me? Because this is like the 4th time I've heard somebody say something about this area. And I got to talking to them, and the thing that caught my attention where they are talking about a fruit tree on this relative's property, an apple tree. And you hear this, I would say a lot, but it's not a lot, but you do hear it often. Situations where somebody will be like, yeah, I had this, apple tree on my property, and the apples were ripe and just about ready to pick or whatever. And I was going to go out and get them the next day. And I go out there and they're gone.
Oh,
all
wow.
The apples are just gone. And this had happened on their relative's property. An entire apple tree was wiped out overnight. And not just the apples on the tree, but the ones on the ground too.
Oh, man.
And I mean, how do all the apples like I understand a few, but how does an entire fruit tree get wiped out overnight? And I've heard that, man, at least 5 or 6 times from different people. So that caught my attention. And, I got on Google Maps and kind of looked at the general area. I think I got it figured out. I didn't ask them for details, it's their relative's property or whatever, but kind of putting the clues together, I think I got it figured out. And whenever you go to look at it, it's like, wow, this could actually be a thing. I could see how this works. One of the weirder ones that I heard, though, actually came from my mom. Someone that she works with works part-time at the airport out by Jinx. I can't remember the name of the airport, but it's out by Turkey Mountain, basically. And this lady swears up and down that she saw a family of Bigfoot running through the grounds of the airport at night.
Whoa.
Like silhouetted by a big metal building and everything. Now, it's not like Tulsa International or anything.
No, yeah. The airport that he's talking about is like south of Jinx, and it's next to a golf course, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that was just kind of crazy to me, because I mean, that's like a populated area.
Yeah, I mean, there's
But
houses galore out there.
if you see, this is a thing. So if you start thinking like, okay, southeast of Tulsa, that airport, Sand Springs, it follows the Arkansas River.
Mm.
So are these things following the Arkansas River and able to run up into town at night or something? Because I mean, how much land can they cover at nighttime? With darkness helping them out and everything. If they're down, in the riverbed or whatever, staying up against the bank line, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, you'll never be able to find it. Or especially if they've dug like a little bit of a, because sometimes that river gets real low, and they could dig out a little, like almost like a cave or a
Yeah.
type in that side of that bank, especially when that water's low. But yeah, that's crazy, man, because that's like a very popular, and it's growing too. It's going south too. It's
Yeah.
that development's going south, but kind of keeping it moving on kind of your timeline, and I appreciate you sharing that information too as well, because I know there's gonna be some people and I know some people from Tulsa that listen. They're gonna be like, oh man, we got them. They're everywhere, but
Yeah.
but so once the outlaws kind of went away and you kind of started doing your own thing. At what's one of the kind of the, I guess, really one of the most interesting things that you guys did before, I guess, before I move on, what's a sighting or an encounter that you guys had when you guys were on an outing that you were like, oh, okay, this is crazy, like these 8 foot 9 foot tall beings are out here.
Man, so I had already so this is all going to go pretty fast. So like we go down to Texas to a conference. Okay. Now by the time we had done that, I had already kind of figured out that like these things are legit. I had gone on a previous outing where I had my first sighting through the night vision. And this is going back to Texas not too long after that, to go to a Bigfoot conference in Jefferson. My friend goes with me, my best friend. He's Cherokee. I went to high school with him, and he's like, I want to go with you and check this out because, man, you're meeting up with strangers. You're going out and looking for something that doesn't exist. Like, he was worried about me. He was actually concerned about my safety. So he wanted to go meet the people, see what was going on exactly. And in his mind, he was going to go down there, debunk everything, figure it all out, and convince me to quit doing it. And so he goes to this conference with me. Well, in true Bigfoot outlaw fashion, we're going to the conference, but we're going to look for Bigfoot while we're down here. And there's some areas outside of the conference, like we didn't stay in a hotel. We camped out the whole time. And actually, on the way to the campgrounds, he and I driving in from Oklahoma, we go across this big, long dam. And I see there's like a spillway coming out from the dam. And there's like a parking lot. And there's a service road that leads to it from the highway that we're on. But then I see there's a dirt road and a gate that's open. And like a sign posted there. And I was like, man, we need to come back and go down that road later and check it out. So we go to camp and everything, meet up with everybody. Later on, I'm telling, a few of the people, hey, we saw this road. It's right down the road from here. We should check it out. So we go and check it out. And it's actually an access to a public hunting area. And we go down this road and it curves back off in there. And I swear, man, there's like, I mean, just stuff that people consider Bigfoot sign, like X formations, tree bows, things like that. I don't know if Bigfoot makes those things or not. I'm just saying they're oftentimes associated with Bigfoot one way or another. So we saw that stuff and we got off in there and we were like, yeah, this looks like a good spot. We're going to come back here tonight. So later that night, we're in 2 different vehicles. eventually that road leads, it kind of winds down and ends up going parallel with the little creek that, comes from the spillway and everything. It's a thick pine forest and hardwoods. And there's a spot at the end where there's kind of like a dead end at a gate. And then the road curves off to the right and goes down about another quarter mile and dead ends down there. So I pull in the first dead end and the other vehicle goes down to the second one. And at that first dead end spot where that gate is, there's like 2 huge trees. I don't know. They look pushed over to me. They were like fallen across the gate, huge full grown trees.
God.
And it like one falling towards the other one, like almost like creating an X, but they're full grown trees. And I was like, that's weird. So we stop, we get out, and as soon as we close the doors to the car, I mean, instantly, we hear something running around just maybe 15 yards from the car inside the tree line. Well, we always had this rule that, like, whenever you get there, you close the doors. That's going to alert everything in the area. You just drove in. So you got to give it time to settle down. So, like, the fact that we just closed the doors and we're out of the vehicle and we instantly hear this, that was kind of weird. So we've got spotlights and flashlights and stuff, but we don't get those out. We just kind of stand there and take it all in. And we can hear something moving around out there. Can't see anything because it's too dark. Well, I walk off in kind of an area to get away from everybody. And there's actually me, my friend, and 2 other people, Bear and this guy named Sammy. Bear and Sammy go kind of down the road. My friend Rod stays by the car. I kind of go across the road the other direction. Well, Rod was kind of spooked, so he had a spotlight with him. And he keeps on popping it on and off because we told him, like, hey, don't leave the spotlight on. Like, this isn't going to help us. Just, if you hear something, turn it on, but try to keep it off. And he just keeps on popping it on and off. So I was like, okay, well, obviously, this area is pretty much ruined at this point. I'm just thinking the sound that we heard was a deer or something. I don't know. Well, all of a sudden he's got the spotlight on and he's by himself and he's saying, I see eye shine. I see eye shine. Okay. Well, he's not accustomed to the woods or anything. He's from the city. It's probably, who knows what it is. You're going to see eye shine. Well, his voice keeps on intensifying and he keeps, you can kind of hear it building and he's kind of panicking a little bit. So we start all converging towards him. Well, by the time I get to the vehicle, Bear and Sammy are already closer to him on the opposite side of the vehicle. And man, he just screams and like throws the spotlight and takes off running around my vehicle. He shoulder bumps Bear out of the way, and Rod's not a big guy and Bear's a big guy. He was freaking out, man, freaking out, and climbs into my car, into the driver's seat, climbs over the seat and gets down in the rear seat of my vehicle and is like locking the doors and stuff and freaking out. And I'm just like, what is going on? So we get like some spotlights out of the vehicle. He's still freaking out. We're shining the lights around in the woods. And I can tell you what I saw. I don't know what they saw, but I saw what looked like something about 8 to 9 feet tall. I could see the upper arm area and part of the lower arm. I couldn't see any hands or anything. I could see like the rib cage and stuff and the hip as it was like running through the trees. I'm like spotlighting into the woods and there's like, overgrowth and everything next to the tree line. And then you've got the pine trees and it kind of goes down into this little river bottom area. So like this thing's just like running between the trees. It's reddish brown in color. It's honestly the same color as dead pine needles. That's exactly what it is. That's the exact color it looked like. which was crazy because the whole area was just covered in dead pine needles on the forest floor. Well, we're kind of freaked out now because here's this thing, you know, and it's not acting right. It's not leaving the area. It's running around, but it ain't leaving, which
Oof.
is not normal behavior. At one point, you could hear it like running parallel with the road. And I was like, okay, is it going to try to cross the road down away from us and circle around on the other side of us? So I like shined the spotlight down the road and hit like eye shine down there that I'm assuming was it at the edge of the road, and it ducked back in, and then you could hear it running back towards us. Well, whenever it did that, it got pretty much dead even with us and just froze, went quiet. Couldn't hear it running no more. So we're like, okay, we need to regroup, you know, get in the car. So we're all piling back in the vehicle. As I get in, I go to turn the vehicle on. Well, whenever I turn the vehicle on, it locks the doors automatically. So Bear and Sammy can't get in the vehicle. So they're just like hammering on the door handle. They're like, unlock the doors, like freaking out. Cause this thing is, I mean, at this point, you know, 10 feet away from.
Kind of sounds like it's pacing y'all.
Yeah. It was crazy. So we get back inside and we've got like a little two-way radio, and we radio the other vehicle, and we're like, you know, hey, get over here now. Like right now. So we hear them like start up the vehicle and everything, and they're coming. We waited for them to get there. And then we had, you know, numbers more in our favor, and we got back out. And that night was one of the wildest nights of my life, man. Those things came in. That one waited there until the rest of the group came, and they came in there and they surrounded us. And that stuff didn't die out until, man, probably 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning before it finally quieted down. They were running around, whistling, multiple sightings. It was crazy. Eventually, so whenever we got in the car, just to back up a little bit, I told everybody, don't say what you saw. Okay. Whenever the other group gets here, we're going to independently go to somebody and tell them what we saw. And so we did that, and all of our stories matched. Our descriptions of what we saw matched. The same color, same size, everything. My buddy Rod was just out. I mean, he was freaking out. It took probably about an hour and a half. Some ladies that were with us, like, got in the car with him and, you know, calmed him down and talked to him and everything. And eventually, he was able to get back out of the car. But I mean, he was ready to go, man. He was like, Matt, please take me home. Take me home right now. Please. I don't want to be here. And he ended up getting a tattoo of a Bigfoot on him because of the experience and everything. Like, changed his life forever. But I mean, like, he was freaked out, man, you know?
Yeah,
and I don't blame him. And eventually, you know, he was able to talk about what he saw. It took him a while. But so whenever he said he got eye shine, he could see eye shine. He was shining the spotlight, and he saw eye shine next to a tree, and it ducked behind a tree. And one of us had told him, whenever you're looking for eye shine in the woods, shine it down at the ground. Look at ground level. Most people look too high for Bigfoot because Bigfoot will drop down on their stomachs and hide all the time. Most people look right over them and don't even know they're there. Or, you know, the other situation is they'll line up with a tree and you'll walk right by them or something. So he was shining it down at the ground. And so he saw eye shine kind of off the ground. So at first he's thinking it's just like a raccoon or something. He doesn't know what it is. Well, then the eye shine goes up into the air.
Oh, man.
And he shines the spotlight up, and it's gone again. And he says, I guess it was behind the tree, because all of a sudden I see this hand and this arm reach around the trunk of the tree, and it leans over and looks at me, and I'm just blasting it in the face with the spotlight.
Oh, man.
And like, whenever this happened, he was within 30 feet of this thing.
Whoa.
Like, he was close, and nobody was near him or anything. That's why he freaked out, you know, because it went from this thing doesn't even exist. These guys are full of it. to, oh my God, there's a monster.
Man.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
pretty intense night. And
Did
that
he did
same location has yielded results for other people years after that. People like basically that night made that spot famous to a certain select few people, and
mm,
other people have gone back to that location and had success. And then years later, I was talking to a researcher from Texas who had an encounter down in that hunting area whenever he was deer hunting back in the 80s.
oh wow.
So yeah, pretty crazy.
Did he see any of the facial features or anything? Like, did he see like, oh, it had like, people always talk about the different
Yeah,
types of look.
yeah. He honestly, his description was the only thing that he could equate it to was Chewbacca. He was like,
Whoa.
it was covered in hair, man. It looked like Chewbacca. I couldn't really tell. He was like, because whenever you like shine a spotlight out, like if you point up spotlight at a tree, and we're talking like million candle power spotlight, it like bleaches it out in the light. So like that was going on. He could see the eye shine, and the face was just kind of like bleached out with the light. And he's freaking out and just throwing the spotlight and running. He's not like standing there trying to study it or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
he was just like, man, it reminded me of Chewbacca. It was just huge and covered in hair.
Man. And so you guys, what time was that? You think when he first saw that? Was it like right as the sun was going down, and then you said it lasted
No,
until two
no.
o'clock?
Yeah, we got there probably around 10 to 10:30. I
Oh
think we
man, but
left camp around 10.
oh man. But man, that's still crazy though that it lasted that long though.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
them to hang around like that, that's crazy.
And then the next day, so like, we're all down there and everything that night. Well, the next day we got to go back to the area during the daylight and check it out. Get our bearings, see if we can find any tracks, things like that. So we go back down there, and right where my vehicle had been parked the night before, there's this huge tree, a huge pine tree. It's probably, I don't know, man, 80 feet tall, like East Texas pine tree. And something, yeah, man, this, so it looked like something had just, I don't know, man, like taken rocks and just destroyed the base. Like tried to chop down this tree with a rock or something. Like there was just
What?
chunks of
Dang.
wood everywhere, and the tree was actually broken, but at the base, right, and I'm saying right where my vehicle was parked, and it would have fallen across the road where my vehicle was, but it was like caught up on vines and stuff and the other surrounding trees, and those were holding it up. And then there was like this kind of a spot of just brush, like a huge brushy area that was on the opposite side of where my vehicle was parked, and the woods kind of wrapped around that. And that whole area, there was like just things like brush and saplings and stuff just pulled out of the ground and just thrown everywhere. It looked like somebody went back there with like a backhoe and just tore the place to hell.
Man.
The very next day that we went back at like, probably 11 o'clock in the morning.
Man.
So what did that between 2 a.m. and 11 o'clock the next day?
Man.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this too. Like, do you think they're nocturnal animals, or do you?
No.
You think they're nocturnal?
No, I think that they're diurnal. If you go through reports, a lot of your sightings happen at dusk and dawn.
Mm.
And I mean, there's just too many sightings that happen during the day for them to be just nocturnal.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a situation where they probably live in small groups and they probably like take naps, throughout the day and throughout the night and stuff. So I don't think they're just primarily active at night, although I do think they do most of their activity at night.
Mm. Yeah, because that's kind of something I always see when it comes to people talking about it, is that from what I heard, they always see it, or like it's they're driving past it and they see it in the headlights, or
Mm-hmm.
or they see it behind them, or when they're driving by. But that's one thing that's so interesting about the Bigfoot topic, is there's so many different theories and so many different um, I would say opinions about it. Um, so during the time of that experience and kind of going forward into like what you know kind of what you're doing now and what you did after the Outlaws, has your opinion of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, all you know all the above, has it changed or has it continued to be the same?
It's a little bit of both. Uh, it's definitely changed in the aspect of starting out. I'm thinking, this is just some undiscovered primate. And while it's crazy, it's just basically a bipedal gorilla. That's where I started. And there's a lot of things that are attributed to Bigfoot that people believe about Bigfoot that do support that theory. Like one of the popular things right now is like people have discovered giant like ground nests.
Mm.
And I mean, like, there's a whole lot more to that story. Like, primatologists have been brought in and observed these nests and everything, and there's more to it. But that's something that like gorillas and chimpanzees do, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
my experiences, especially in Oklahoma, have been more along the lines of this is some kind of person. This is a person. This isn't a wild animal. This is acting very human like in
Mm.
a lot of ways. And so I've kind of, more or less put all my cards in that pile of them being some sort of person, maybe different than us, but still a person.
Mm.
But now I'm starting to lean towards the area of maybe there's more than one thing out there. Maybe it's not all just Bigfoot people are experiencing, but it's just all getting lumped together because people just assume that it's Bigfoot. Maybe
Mm.
there is uh, some kind of, feral people out there living in the wild, and maybe there is some sort of big undiscovered primate living out there with them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's very interesting, because like on a previous episode, I discussed kind of caves and kind of connection between missing people and Muskogee Creeks and Seminoles. We kind of believe in. I say we, but um, they different tribes believe in that they go underground and
mm-hmm.
they come from these caves and I know you on the kind of the conversations we had after we recorded, but you know, do you think that some of these disappearances are equated to Bigfoot, or do you think Bigfoot is like that? I've heard that but he's always the keeper of the forest. He helps, this helps that. Do you think that Bigfoot it could do that, could take people and do those types of things?
Man, I think there's, preachers and murderers that exist,
Mm.
I think Bigfoot's the same way. I mean, if you go with, the tribal history, most tribes talk about these things taking people, taking children. Uh, so that's definitely part of it. And I know in Oklahoma, especially, those stories still exist. Uh, you've probably heard it yourself. You got to come in whenever the sun goes down. Something, the booger man's going to get you. Something's going to take you. And I think that has to have some relevancy. I think that's based on something. But then I've also heard stories out in the Pacific Northwest. Uh, a lot of stories circulating out there about Bigfoot helping people, and even some stories of people helping Bigfoot. Uh, especially tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think you have a little bit of both. I think these things are kind of individuals, and I think while you've got some that are more of like helping someone lost get out of the woods, there's definitely something that comes to mind. It's been a few years now, but there's a little boy lost in North Carolina, and he was a toddler, and he was lost for multiple days. Huge search and rescue effort. Nobody could find him, and then he just shows back up, and he says to his parents, I believe it was, that a bear helped him survive. A bear took care of him. Well, what's a little kid gonna call a Bigfoot? It doesn't know what a
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot is. If
Mm-hmm.
you're 5 or 6 years old, I think he even called it the Bear Man or something like that. So I believe that it's possible that a Bigfoot helped that little kid get back home. And I've heard other stories like that.
Mm.
But then I've also heard nightmare stories.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. I just think they're probably individuals like we are.
Let me ask you this, since kind of discussing, what else could be out there. What would you say, in terms of, I know, like I said, people talk about the rake,
Hmm.
people talk about UFOs, people talk about the werewolves or Dogman, which Dogman to me is kind of a weird name, but
Yeah.
um, Dogman, they talk about, all these different beings or creatures that are out in the woods and all over the place. What would you say is the kind of being or creature that maybe spooks you out the most?
Oh man. Uh
I
you
know I
know,
put you on the spot there.
yeah, that's a rough one, man.
Or have you heard a story from somebody that you're like, man, I don't think I'd want to run into that thing?
I mean, honestly, what people call a dog man, I don't want to have nothing to do with. I don't want to run into a canine. I mean, if it is how people describe it, I mean, I grew up calling that a werewolf, you
Yeah.
know, no matter which direction you go in terms of belief, if it does exist, whether it be a dog man, a werewolf, a shapeshifter of some kind, all of it's bad. None of it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And canines are meat eaters. Those are predators.
Yeah.
So that puts me on the menu, and I'm not down with that. That terrifies me. Uh, and giant birds, thunderbirds, and things like that also kind of freak me out. I'm kind of weary of birds up close in general. Like to observe birds from a distance, but the idea of a gigantic bird out there that could take me down, I'm not real big on that. But then, man, there's so much stuff, really.
Yeah.
I can't really narrow it down, man, because then if we start going into the realms of the supernatural and things that exist some places and cross over to this plane, there's a lot of things I don't want to have nothing to do with.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's always been, the being that I always get spooked out about, and I think it's a lot, from what I've heard is, man, I get the snakes. I know that was something that the big snakes
Hmm.
is something that I talked about on your podcast, and I told a few stories, but that's one thing that when we talk about these things out in the woods. Um, at the end of the day, we really don't know what they are, and we can put a name to it or whatever. But I agree with you. There's something to be said about Oklahoma, man. We have a lot of weird stuff, and I know we're hitting about an hour right now. What is a story that has been told to you from somebody here in Oklahoma that's kind of made you, be like, man, that's kind of crazy. If you have one of those.
Oh man, another on the spot question. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories uh, from the Anadarko area. Uh, Dan Ricky, one of my colleagues that I kind of came up with, he was from that area in a small town called Alfalfa outside of Carnegie. And this would be, around Fort Sill and everything, out west of Oklahoma City. And down there, the first time I went down there, I had heard like several Bigfoot stories from him. And I went down there, and just on the drive there, I'm like looking around, and it's one of those areas of Oklahoma where you can see as far as your eyes will allow it. There's no hills or anything. It's
Mm,
just flat. Lots of soybean fields. You got prickly pear cactus growing up around the highway out there. It's just one of those areas where it's just like, man, there ain't no way that there's Bigfoot out here. There's just no way. And then you get out there, and you get taken to some of those canyons and down into some of those, you know, river bottoms and stuff where there are trees, and it gets real thick in a hurry. And I've heard some Bigfoot stories from out that way that, I mean, I've heard horrible things, horrible things.
Can you tell one of them, or is it on the down low? You know, is it like, oh,
Man, there's this one story that comes to mind. This taxidermist that lived out there, and his taxidermy shop was out behind his house. It was like a metal building, I think, and he had it hooked up where, like, whenever his phone inside the house rang, there was a bell attached to the building. And so there was an idea that maybe that bell caused the problems. Then there was also, he had like a garden, and the deer were getting in his garden. So he put up like a little electric fencing around the garden. But whatever the reason, it started out with something yanked the electric fencing up out of the ground. Like he had it, you know, staked down in the ground and everything. Something pulled it out of the ground. And he thought, well, maybe like a deer or something got tangled up in it. And then something happened where he was he heard something outside or something. He thought it was another deer getting into his garden or something, and he went out there with a gun, and it was a Bigfoot, and he shot at it and hit
Whoa.
it, but didn't kill it. And I don't remember if it was the next day or what, but on down the road, assuming it was Bigfoot that did it, he comes outside, and his horse is dead. The head has been pulled off of the horse.
Whoa.
And there's just blood and big bloody handprints smeared all over that metal building.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, that's one that really stuck with me, you know, because I mean, I get it, you know, don't go shooting at these things, period. Don't go messing with them. But the idea that, you know, that's some serious retaliation, man. That's some serious stuff. That kind of goes into other areas of the conversation, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I mean, I got one last thing for you. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on. I got one last thing. I know. So I had released This Is Creepy Part 3, and I had kind of been really just trying to get some information on that casino footage about from that casino out in Concho.
Yeah.
And I had someone who had worked security out there. You know, I had to keep them anonymous. Have you heard anything about that casino footage, or have you heard anything about that? Any other stories regarding that casino and them possibly covering that up, or have you heard anything? If you got to keep it to the vest, I understand, but I thought I'd ask you.
I mean, I've heard all kinds of things. You know, obviously coming from Oklahoma, it's something I always ask about anytime I meet somebody new that I can ask. I've probably heard the same stories you have. You know, I've a guy working security, talked to this friend of mine, told me one story. Then there's a couple people that we were kind of friends with that worked there at the time. They told some stories, you know. Then I talked to this researcher out of Oklahoma that was apparently part of the initial investigation and saw the video himself.
Oh.
So a couple things tied to the video. And like I said, there's different stories. So I don't know which one's the truth or if any of them are true. The tribe told the employees, don't talk about the video. Don't answer any questions about the video. If you do, you're going to lose your job. So they shut everybody down. Then I heard that the tribe kept the video and it's locked up in a safe somewhere. Then I heard the Bureau of Indian Affairs came down and confiscated the video. Then I heard the elders of the tribe had destroyed the video. So most recently, I had a guy on my show from the area, a native guy, and I asked him about it. And he seems to think that the video still exists and
Oh
that
wow.
eventually it will leak. Somebody has a copy somewhere, but he hasn't ever seen it. And I don't know if he's heard that information firsthand or what, but that was his belief that the video is still in existence, was not destroyed, was not confiscated.
Man. Yeah, I think that's one of the mysteries that that with my podcast that I'm trying to get to the bottom of, because to me that is the most fascinating. I remember hearing about that years ago, but like, someone had reached out to me about it, and I said, man, and I started asking questions, and he couldn't really, he got into it a little bit, but like I just like, man, that's I guess there had been a lot of activity around that casino prior to
Yeah.
and after. And
Yeah, there's a few stories tied to that casino besides just the, famous video incident. And they've actually moved those dumpsters away from the back of the casino and put them more out by the tree line, and, kind of redid the parking lot and everything to kind of prevent anything like that from happening again. I know one of the stories was, with it being a casino, a lot of times they'll, bust in old people from like a nursing home or something, let them, gamble away their social security checks. And so this bus driver had dropped off a bunch of old ladies at the casino, and he was waiting out in the parking lot for them, and he saw a Bigfoot from his angle. He could see it come out of the tree line and everything, and it was like standing there at the edge of the parking lot, and he left. He drove the bus back to the lot and got in his car and went home and never came back. Quit his job right there on the spot. And whenever all those old ladies came out, the bus was gone, didn't know what was going on or anything.
Oh man, golly. Man,
Yeah.
he was out of there. He said, I want no parts of that,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But it's crazy, man. I mean, down there in that part of Oklahoma, I mean, people see Bigfoot all the time. Just
Yeah, it's
all
like
the time.
it's like a normal thing, man. That's one thing that I like I said, I know that's Carnegie's kind of Kiowa,
Yeah.
and I got some Kiowa family that they always talk about things like that, and eventually there's a story. I don't know if this is what they do, those Bigfoot, them cloaking or whatever, but I heard a story that they were coming down off that main highway, and I cannot remember the name of that highway that goes straight into Carnegie. And I can't remember the name of the highway. I have to look at my messages, but they said that they saw a predator-like thing. It was big, it was 9 foot tall, but they could see the outline. You know how predator you kind of see.
Yeah.
And they talk about some type of being that can do that out there, and you just never know, man, with all that type of stuff that goes on, especially out there in that old land, man, that kind of is still untapped.
That guy that I had on my show that was, I asked about the casino. He was going down I think that same highway with his ex-wife, and I think he had his kids in the back seat and they were asleep or something. And they saw a deer jump out from the side of the road out of the tree line, like crossing the road in front of him. And he didn't have time to stop or swerve or anything. So he just kind of, reached out and braced himself. And as that deer jumped in front of his headlights, it turned into an owl and flew off over the top of his vehicle. And his wife saw it too. And she was, pretty shook up and everything. She was like, what did you just see? What did you just see? And like they both had seen the same thing, that, deer came out of the woods and turned into an owl. So that one was a pretty, I hadn't heard that one, Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. Woo, yeah, boy. Especially, man, like, I know Muskogee Creeks really feel this way about owls, man.
Yeah.
Harbinger of, some type of omen, but yeah, man, like I said, you just never really know what's out here. And that's one thing that I think that's kind of what I'm, with my podcast, and I know definitely with your podcast too. We're just trying to figure out what's going on, and but man, I appreciate you coming on
Yeah, of
and
course.
sharing these stories and helping my podcast out by coming on. And where can they find you at? Where's places that they can find you at for your
Ma-
podcast and everything?
Man, I'm pretty much everywhere. Whatever your favorite podcast app is, YouTube. Probably the easiest thing is just bigfootcrossroads.com. It's got everything right there, all in one place.
There we go, man. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's definitely, like I said, one of a milestone for me personally, because like I said, you helped to me. You were holding that group together a little bit, in my opinion, with the Outlaws. I'll keep it
I
100
appreciate it.
because you would kind of keep them in a I would say like a order almost, kind of keep the thing moving forward. But like I said, man, I appreciate you coming on
Yeah, for sure.
and doing
Enjoyed
that.
it. Yeah, have to do it again sometime.
Yes, sir. Had to get you on for a part 2, man. No doubt.
Yeah, I'm down.
But you guys can follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Warcry Pod is the name for that. Facebook, Yahola Tiger. Message me, let me know you listen to the podcast. Tell me what favorite your episode. If you just add me as a friend, it's gonna be hard for me to add you back. But and then you guys, if you want to share your stories for This Is Creepy Part 4, realwarcrypod@gmail.com. And I appreciate everybody that listens to the podcast. I appreciate Matt coming on, sharing those good stories, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.